tonight. And Councilmember Stedman is also absent. But we do have a quorum tonight. And we do have our city manager tonight. I'll start tonight by reading our land acknowledgement. We, the city of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and Squaxin Island Tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today, who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that the community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. And with that, can I please get a motion for our agenda tonight?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about tonight's agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously, and we have an approved agenda. The first item on our approved agenda tonight is public comment. I will start by saying there is one written comment tonight, which will be attached to the record, and it looks like we do have one person here to comment, for public comment, Shelley Nicholson. Shelley Nicholson with us? Hi, Shelley. Would you please, just please step over to the podium over here, introduce yourself, the city that you live in, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
So I'm Shelley Nicholson. I live in Olympia, but I am on the Lacey Chamber of Commerce Board, and I am chairing the South Sound Barbecue Festival this year. And one of the things that we wanted to add is something different and unique that attracts people to come, but it'd be fun. And so we came up with an idea called the Council and Command Barbecue Throwdown. So what we would like to see is a team from City Council, the Police Department, the Fire Department, maybe the Sheriff's Department, public service people. But we want it to be where you're going to cook ribs. It does not have to be perfect, but we are going to have on stage 3 certified barbecue professional judges judging the barbecue. I believe one of them is my husband. I think he signed himself up for them because he is a certified barbecue judge. But we need to know that we have your buy-in, that you would be willing to have a team there. It's going to be kept secret, like who's doing what. But my thought process is that it could be some fun ribbing on social media. Ribbing, because you'd be cooking ribs. But it's a good way for people to see that City Council, the Police Department, the Fire Department, Sheriff's Department, they all still are humans and do things that are fun and tease and joke, and it's like a bragging rights thing. And we just think it'd be a fun new draw to the barbecue festival, because I think we've gotten away from some of the more barbecue-related things, and we're trying to bring it back to there. Do you have any questions? So I would just like to know, you don't have to tell me right now, I'm not going to put you on the spot, if you guys would be interested in doing something like that, because then we can start promoting it, and it would be in the afternoon, I think around 3 o'clock. I have the schedule at home, but I just think it'd be something fun and different, and we talked to Justin Beer from City about it, and he thought it was a great idea. He just wants to judge it, though, I think, so, but that's all I have to say. Thanks for considering.
Thank you for your
We'll have
comments.
to talk amongst the council and get back to you on it for sure.
You will get a response. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address this council tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our next agenda item. Next on our agenda is the Regional Transportation Plan, and it looks like we will have Katrina Van Every presenting, who is the Transportation Manager for Thurston Regional Planning Council. Welcome.
So you want me to push this on?
Please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing us to have some time on your agenda tonight. I'll just wait for a minute for that presentation to get pulled up. But Thurston Regional Planning Council, as you know, is involved in regional planning, and one of our primary responsibilities is transportation. You know, transportation infrastructure is very important to your city. It's also important to the region as a whole. And so the state and the federal government call on TRPC as a metropolitan planning organization and as a regional transportation planning organization to pull together a regional transportation plan, and we update this every 5 years. So we are nearing the tail end of our update cycle and are just trying to get the word out there about it, and also just give you advance notice that we will be holding a public comment period in the near future. And so the intent of this presentation will be to just give you an overview of what the regional transportation plan is and what are the touchstones that are really applicable to Lacey itself. And do we have that presentation? Yes. Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. I did get a chance to look at your presentation. I'll hold my comments until
Yeah.
the floor is
Thank you.
yours.
All right, so you can go to the next slide. What are the key takeaways that people should know? Let's start with that. Up front, you can go ahead and click through this slide a little bit. So first off, our regional transportation, our region's planned land use. Thank you. Our region's planned land use and roadway capacity improvements that we've planned for in the next 25 years are good and they're helpful, but they're not sufficient to meet our regionally adopted targets, goals, and level of service standards that help us manage congestion on the roadways. Let's see. Oh, there we go. A little too fast. Sorry about that. Okay. So we can still make really good progress on our regionally adopted targets and goals, and that will help reduce the level of congestion that we see in the future. And then finally, our growing population, no joke, and I'm sure this is pretty obvious, will lead to increased traffic volumes and congestion. And the 80 projects that are in the RTP, so these are projects of regional significance or that are regionally important, will help mitigate that vehicle congestion in the future. So as I mentioned, the RTP is a plan that we do every 5 years. It is federally and state required plan, but it really is a roadmap for what a complete transportation system looks like in the Thurston region. It looks out 25 years, so we're looking out to 2050, and it takes into consideration all different modes of travel. So walking, biking, whether you're driving a car, whether you are riding a bus, if you are hauling freight, what does that look like? We also talk about other modes of transportation that are less common in the area, including what's happening at the airport, what's happening at the port. So all of these things come together and are in one document for the region. Oh, we're moving through this really fast. So in the plan itself, in addition to that 25-year planning horizon, we also look at regional goals and policies. So these are generally things that we have talked about over time. A lot of them are long-standing goals and policies that have been in place for the last 10 years. We also have recommendations that come out of the plan. Maintenance is a great example of that. Safety is a great example of that. The 80 projects that the region is planning to do in the next 25 years are also recommendations. We also look at a financial forecast. So one of the things about the plan is that it's not intended to be a wish list of things that we hope we'll be able to get done over the next 25 years, but it's supposed to be based in reality. So given the financial constraints that our region has, what projects are reasonable to be expected to be completed in the next 25 years. So it is based in reality. It is constrained by what we know and what we can reasonably assume to exist with regard to financial opportunities and obligations in the future, and then the future conditions. So based on all the information that we have, we update a regional transportation demand model that looks at population, land use, and traffic volumes to understand, and employment to understand what is our transportation system going to look like in the future based on those inputs. So areas of emphasis, again, that we look at are safety is a big one for us this year. There's been a lot of discussion about safety. I know Lacey is working on a safety action plan. TRPC is working on one to help bring other jurisdictions up to the same level as what you guys have been working on here. Equity is another piece. I know there's been a lot of discussion at the federal level about that word and what it means, but in 2021, we started this process with a transportation priority survey, and we talked about equity and asked what the community felt about that concept, gave a definition, and for the most part, the majority of people who responded to that survey, we had over 4,000 people participate in it, were open and hoping or agreed with our statement for what equity means. And so that is a big piece that is part of this update to the regional transportation plan, is looking at how can we make a more equitable transportation system and what are the inputs and things that we might need to do that. Climate and greenhouse gas emissions, another possibly problematic word from a federal standpoint, but these are things that are important to our region and to our state. And so this is also something that has been talked about and strengthened in the regional transportation plan. Maintaining the system that we've already got. There's no sense in building new roads if what we have isn't being maintained. And so maintenance is one of those bedrock and foundation pieces to making sure the transportation system works into the future. And then finally, looking at those projects that continue to enhance our transportation options, especially transit. Looking at emphasizing system efficiency and using technology to do that. Strategically expanding the system where it's necessary and makes sense, especially with the growth that our community is experiencing, and planning for local and state roads as a cohesive system. WashDOT controls I-5 and other major highways in the region, but they are part of the system that makes people here be able to move from community to community or from their jobs to home to school, et cetera. And so you cannot treat them as separate entities. We need to look at it as a system as a whole. So what are those regional targets and goals that we're striving for? Reducing those traffic fatalities to zero, increasing the share of households in urban areas and preserving our rural areas, decreasing our annual vehicle miles traveled, so how many miles do people travel on an annual basis, and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, and then increasing our active transportation and transit use. So those first four topics are actual targets and goal that as a region we have adopted in some form or fashion. The fourth, increasing active transportation and transit use, is a goal that is in the current regional transportation plan. It would carry forward as a goal in the update. But we've said that we want to do that. And what we're seeing with each of these is that we're not on schedule. We're not going to meet those goals and targets that we've set ourselves for. And so we're in a nice place right now because there's a lot of work going on at the local level and at the regional level to help us try and figure out how to change those trajectories of the trends that we're seeing with regard to safety, greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. So how will our region change between now and 2050? Well, we're going to see 106,000 more people. That's an increase of 36% over our population in 2022. We're going to see 58,000 more housing units, 52,000 more jobs, and 52,000 more people living near transit. And by living near transit, I mean within a half mile of an intercity transit stop or within a half mile of a rural transit route. So IT and our rural transit operate a little bit differently. Rural transit, if you can flag down the bus driver along the road, they will stop for you if it's safe and they know that they need to stop for you. So we've got a lot of changes coming down the pipeline with regard to how our community is growing. In addition to that, we have 80 regional projects that are going to change the footprint of what our transportation system looks like. A lot of these are construction projects, but there's a lot of other things that are not construction. So think of studies that help us understand what's happening in a certain area of the community. It could also be a lot of transit projects where they're looking at improving our transportation efficiencies. We have our regional trails system that is going to be expanded over the next 25 years. We have more realigned or new highway interchanges that are being proposed. So a lot's going to be changed in the next 25 years. So with regard to Lacey, some of the projects that you all have that are reflected in the Regional Transportation Plan, you have a number of capacity projects, including College Street corridor improvements, which is a very important for the region. I don't know if you all have heard about Intercity Transit's new system reimagining that they're going through, but one of the things they're looking at doing is really emphasizing the College Street corridor as a major thoroughfare that might receive more frequent transportation or transit options on it. Marvin Road widening, new connections, including the College Street extension that I don't know if you've started it yet. You have? Yep, so that one is one that's included, but also the work that's happening at Hawks Prairie with regard to the Nisqually tribe and the development of that property there. So that's going to be a pretty big, important project as well. Some trail projects, the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail extension. So we've got one in Olympia that they're looking to extend out, but we also have Thurston County working on an option to extend it east. We have public transportation projects, so East Martin Gateway Transit Facility, so the proposed roundabout at Deutero and Martin Way. Expansion of urban transit system or transit services and high-frequency corridor service along Martin Way. So there's a lot of good things happening at Intercity Transit with regard to transit options and expanding the work that they are doing, which can really be a benefit to not only the Lacey area, but also the region as a whole. And then some studies. So some of these are studies that Lacey is looking at doing in the future. So Desmond Drive Extension Study, Ruddle Road Corridor Study, but we also have some work at TRPC that we're working on. One is the bicycle connectivity strategy, so looking at our transportation system for bikes, not just the trails, but also looking at the on-road bike lanes and bike corridors that are established and seeing how we can better connect to the system on a regional basis. And then the freight mobility strategy. So we have funding to do a freight mobility strategy to look at how we can improve the access and ability of freight to move through this region, including to the warehouse districts that are growing in the Hawks Prairie area, as well as in the Tumwater area. So as part of this update, we are almost to the tail end of completing a public review draft. We should have that done by the end of March. We are looking at asking council, the TRPC's council, to release that draft for public comment in April. And assuming that that happens, that public comment period will be for 30 days. After that, we'll take all those comments, revise the draft based on that and other information that we have, take it to our Transportation Policy Board for a recommendation, and then ask council to adopt it in July. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the council?
On Friday morning, so, or something very similar, so I think we got our questions dealt with, but you guys,
It's only new to us.
all new to you all, so.
Is there any update on the I-5 corridor study?
Not at this stage, so WashDOT is still working on well, I guess the first question is, are you talking about the Tumwater or are you talking Nisqually to Mounts Road to Nisqually?
Tumwater.
Tumwater. I have not heard any updates about that project in particular, but I'm happy to reach out to WashDOT staff and report back to you.
You mentioned on there 3 new or realigned highway interchanges. Which 3?
So Lacey has one proposed for Martin Way and I-5. Tumwater is looking at redoing some work on, I think, 93rd. And there's still ongoing work around Trosper and I-5 and that whole area. There's actually a series of, I think, 5 roundabouts so far. 3 of them have been constructed, but we're still waiting for 2 more. So those are I think, the 3 projects. There might be another one out there, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Is intercity transit any closer to finding a solution for their turnaround at the end of Martin Way up there, and Martin Way and Duro?
I don't know where they're at with that. I do know that they still have funding for the preliminary engineering for that, but I'm not sure where they are with regard to definitively saying this will be a roundabout or not.
Is there any more from the council? Okay.
Oh,
Well,
I-
go ahead.
Just, when we were talking about this, we anticipate certain things, right? Some of these projects, if implemented, will reduce congestion, but we still expect that even if all these things happen, based on land use designations right now, we're not going to be meeting some of our goals related to, clustering residential units closer to urban centers and reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing safety incidences, reducing congestion. But we're in the middle of a comprehensive plan update, and so based on potential changes to our land use designations, we could actually get closer to some of these goals. So this plan, like our transportation plan between now and 2050, is based on what we have right now, right? Because we can't forecast policy changes we haven't made yet. But if in the future we decide to do different things with our land use designations, this plan will get updated over time, and we might see that we get a little closer to some of those targets.
Yeah, I look at this update of the regional transportation plan kind of as an interim step because there is so much planning effort happening right now. We've got the comprehensive plan updates where you are required to include multimodal level of service standards. You've got the housing allocations and the impact that might have. If you're making any land use changes, all of these things are going to swirl around. And when we come back in another 5 years to update the regional transportation plan, we'll be able to incorporate those new pieces that are still working their way through the system into that new plan. But where we are today, and I'm sure you're not surprised by this, we're not meeting a lot of our targets. And so those safety action plans, the land use analyses that you're doing, the transportation work that you're doing locally, the housing work that you're doing locally, all of these things are going to impact what happens in another 5 years when hopefully we come back and talk to you about the regional transportation plan again.
It's interesting that this plan precedes the comp plans that are on the way. So
Yeah.
it's kind of.
It's unfortunate, but it is what it is, yeah. So, but we'll be ahead of you next time.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your
joining us
time.
tonight.
I appreciate it.
Okay, next on our agenda is the public safety update. Presenting, we have Chief of Police Robert Almada. Hey, Chief.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me this evening. I had this down to 7 slides, showed it to my staff. They said some of the slides were a little data rich, so I had to break it out to 14. Okay, so here we go. All right. Huh. Okay, so today we'll talk about our policing mission, just a quick review there. Talk about staffing and resources, doing a recap for last year, and then talk about strategic priorities for next year. We'll talk a little bit about crime stats, but they'll be really broad and understand they're preliminary. Nothing's permanent until July, and permanent's in quotes too, because it's always subject to change. And then we got a little bit of time for Q&A. Okay. So the Lacey Police Department, as you well know, is community-based policing, community policing, and all officers that we hire and bring to the department have a connection to the community. That's really a big part of what we do and helps us keep the community focus that we have. We really put an emphasis on community caretaking and education versus first, and then we do enforcement second. I always say that we're much more likely to educate and inform than do an enforcement action on folks. And the reason behind that is if we get voluntary compliance, that's longer lasting than if you force compliance through some type of enforcement mechanism. We're more than willing to do that if we need to. However, usually our officers are pretty gifted with informing and educating, so we do get good results with that. We're data-driven. We use crime analysis. We look at trends. We really concentrate on predators and habitual offenders for the bulk of our enforcement activities. We really focus on rapid response to calls for service. We don't like to let things linger. We find that it tends to stop things from spiraling quickly. We work on regional information sharing with our partners. We host and participate in a monthly detective meeting, as well as I meet with the prosecutor's office and other police chiefs on a monthly basis. We have another number of other meetings we do as well in order to exchange information and provide some cohesiveness in our law enforcement strategies throughout the region. As you also know, we're starting a PROAC unit here in July with the other 3 cities, ourselves, Tumwater, and Olympia, and that'll focus on crime offenders that are affecting all 3 jurisdictions. There'll be an emphasis on domestic violence fugitives and also other fugitives affecting all 3 jurisdictions. Let's see. So we really work on being proactive, high visibility, work on policing hotspots. You've seen that in our focus on business district enforcement activity, both on Cedar Canyon up in Hawks Prairie primarily, and making sure that folks know that if you steal stuff in Lacey, you go to jail. That's just not allowed. So you've seen a lot of that in our social media, I'm sure. And finally, professional, transparent, and accountable. We're the only accredited agency here in Thurston County. We're quite proud of that. We've been accredited since 1995. We were reaccredited last year. Our body-worn camera is up and running and going very well, as viewed from our huge rise in public records requests, been up 63% over last year.
Chief, how often do you have to go through the accreditation?
Accreditation's every 4 years.
Before.
And then there's like a re-up like halfway through, and they send standards out every year that we did. Like we just did the one for, we had to provide evaluations for every probationary employee, of which we had a bunch over the last 2 years. So with all our officers that we hired. Again, open data, and we are audited by WCIA as an objective third party to make sure we're doing everything right, as well as by WASPIC. So now I'd like to go to homelessness and our philosophy there. So our approach to homelessness is really comprehensive. It's rooted in human dignity, compassion, empathy, and seeking improved outcomes through both service, collaboration, cooperation, and accountability. And really in that order, and trying to get folks connected to services, and only using enforcement and accountability as a last step in that process. So we really work on focusing and linking people in crisis to resources and services. As you know, we use a co-responder program with Olympic Health and Recovery Services, known as the Mobile Outreach Team, or MOT. And right now that consists of a designated crisis responder that we have embedded here at the police department. We're one of the few departments that have a designated crisis responder embedded at the police department, as well as 2 mental health clinicians and 2 peer support folks with lived experience. And they're all embedded here at the police department. And through that behavioral health outreach, comprehensive case management, and wraparound services, providing individual care for each person. Mott responded to over almost 2,000 calls for service in 2024. They engaged over 650 homeless individuals. That's a lot. And I'll talk about one of those things that happened recently about what the impacts that Mott can have and the positive impacts. CRU, our Community Resource Unit, has engaged approximately 225 encampments in Lacey in 2024, along with 18 RVs and 10 vehicles that were associated with homeless activity. And officers department-wide responded to over 1,000 calls associated with homeless activity. Although this number, we believe, is being underreported, the way we account for homeless activity and radio calls is officers put in a code at the end of the call. And depending on service activity and priorities, they don't always get that code put into the call. So we believe actually our numbers are actually a bit higher than that. We also have our Compassionate Care Fund. Thank you very much for funding that. We used to have First Responders, which was a nonprofit that provided funding. That has now been dissolved, and now we really rely on our City Compassionate Care Fund. And we use that fund for a variety of things, including replacing people's identifications so they can get services, getting cell phones reactivated so they can contact services, getting their documentation in there, getting to appointments so that they get access to the services they deserve, both being vets and folks that have access and qualify for a variety of services. And as you know, we work with over 24 different types of service providers throughout the county. So moving on, we provide clothing, water, blankets, assistance to cell service documents. Like I said, that's through the Compassionate Care Fund. We also receive some funding from Uline, which is part of their neighborhood grant program. We had about $2,500 in that account, which we used to house a single mom and her 4 kids, and get them first and last month rent and into a housing situation, which they needed. They were pretty dire circumstances. They've been working with us, and we were able to use that funding for that purpose, and that was pretty effective, and got them out of
Questions as we go, or do
homelessness.
you want to at the end?
Sure.
So with the Compassionate Care Fund, are the officers have the discretion for
Yes.
using that?
Yes. So instead, what we used to do is dip into our own pocket, frankly, and officers would buy food and shoes for folks out of their own pocket. Now what they do is there's a debit card. They're able to use that debit card. They keep the receipts. They do the paperwork. It comes up to my office. We do an accounting and reconciliation on that account, and then I forward back over to Troy Wu, and they do a secondary accounting to make sure that it was all used properly. So sometimes we give a couple of gallons of gas for a car that might be stuck. Sometimes we might buy a battery for a car, install the car, start the battery. We do a lot of things which are kind of outside the realm of law enforcement to get people where they need to go, so they can get to their appointments and different things.
Excellent.
And as you well know, we have the rapid response team, which is really important to make sure keeping our city nice. As you know, abandoned property, trash will beget more trash. And so as we come across that, the rapid response team has really been beneficial, both collecting abandoned shopping carts, abandoned bric-a-brac and debris and trash and everything else. So they've been a big godsend for that, as well as cleaning up graffiti in their spare time. And then finally, accountability for criminal behavior. It is a last mechanism we use, but we do use that on occasion. And frankly, pretty sparsely, but it's a mechanism that we are able to use the camping ordinance when needed for folks that are just not willing to take services on an habitual basis. Now, I got to tell you, it takes a long time to build relationships with folks that are homeless and have been through the system, right? It's a complicated thing. It's a complicated thing for someone who has a regular place to sleep and 3 meals a day. Imagine not having a steady place to stay, and you're in survival mode, not knowing where your next meal is coming, let alone where you're going to stay that night, and trying to navigate that system and getting to appointments and remember who you last talked to and being on hold for 35 minutes and all that other stuff. So we try to help them navigate that system. So what I'd also like to talk to you about today is something that happened recently regarding a person in crisis. And what happened was, just back in February, we were notified through dispatch, a nurse was calling and saying that she was on the phone with a female, and the female was involved in cutting behavior and was taking pills and was going to kill herself. The female in crisis also said that she would attack any law enforcement or aide or any responder that came to her address and would attack them with a knife or jump off the balcony, right? She was just really in crisis and escalating and starting to spiral. One of our officers were able to make telephonic contact with this female, but she refused to talk to him, and again, repeated her threats that if law enforcement came, first responders came, she was going to attack them with a knife and jump off the balcony. So Lacey Mott heard the call. They volunteered to assist, and they were able to get the subject on the phone and start talking to the female. And as they were talking to her, unbeknownst to Mott, she got on another line, contacted TCOM and said, "Hey, roll fire to my location." And they hadn't put two and two together, unfortunately, so LA District Fire, Lacey Fire District 3 showed up at her house, not knowing, knock on the door, "Hi, how can we help?" And true to her threat, she started attacking them. So they're pulling the doors shut. She's trying to get through the door. So Mott's getting a hold of officers saying, "Hey, this is escalating. You got to get out there." So all the officers rolled out to the location. We're able to extricate fire out of there safely, which is good. Unfortunately, that's when she set a small fire in the apartment. Mott was then able to talk to her some more, coax her out of the apartment, and then she was taken into custody with no use of force at that point through the assistance of Mott. We were able to make entry into the apartment, put out the fire, and all was well. And then she was taken to a local facility for treatment. But through the interaction of Mott coming in and using their experiences with people in crisis and being that non-threatening entity, right? Sometimes officers are perceived that way, even though I don't think we're threatening, but still, I get it. People kind of see us that way sometimes. They were able to interact with this person in crisis and de-escalate enough to where she could get the help that she needed. Really one of the big benefits. And as officers, having that relationship with Mott, having them embedded at the police department, knowing each other on a first name basis is that trust of like, hey, this person can step into the call. Like, they know when to call us, when to go for help. Say, hey, no, you guys got to get over here now. We can't help anymore. Now you guys need to get involved, right? And then stepping back and like, okay, now we can reassess, reacquire, and reengage with the suspect or with the person because you're here to back our play, right? It's only through the continuing interaction with Olympic Health Recovery Services and these personnel on a daily basis that we're able to have that operational understanding. If it had just been some clinician calling, we don't know who that person is. We don't know what their level of understanding is. They don't know the level of operational knowledge for the police department. That's why it's so critical having them embedded with us. So I thought it was a pretty good anecdote to explain that.
Great outcome.
Yeah, excellent outcome. Excellent. And we put the fire out, so hey. Yay. Okay, moving on to our strategic priorities for last year, 2024. Sorry, thanks. Thank you. There you go, they're there. Okay, so emphasis was on staffing, retention, and training. As you know, when I got here in 2019, we had 52 officers. In the last 5 years, we've increased staffing up to 72. Part of that was through using reserves, part of that was expansion, also through Prop 1 funding. And true to that, crime reduction was one of our strategic priorities. The fleet, we'll talk about the fleet. Prop 1 funding, having a plan for that when that passed. And then, as I was talking about earlier, regional law enforcement alignment. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on in 2024, a lot. So we have 72 funded commission positions. As you know, we had 5 positions we were doing originally as succession positions, funding through reserves for 5 years. We were able to make those 5 positions permanent and add 4 new positions to that, police officer FTEs, giving us a total of 9. In addition, with the additional growth that we'd had along the way, that gets us to 72, along with 18.5, half, if you will, funded civilian FTEs. Also, we have 11 Lacey senior volunteers, as well as 12 explorers. So Explorer is a volunteer at the department between 15 and 20, and they learn how to be a police officer. They learn what it means to be in a police environment and a police culture. They provide traffic management at St. Martin graduations, they do ride-alongs, they go to an Explorer Academy and learn police procedures. They learn to talk to people, they learn how to do interviews, they learn leadership, they learn discipline. They get in shape a little bit too, which is always kind of fun. So it's a way for the youth in our community to learn more about the police department. And whether they want to be police officers or not is up to them, but it also really prepares them for the job market and prepares them for college and for having a little more structure in their lives. Sometimes some folks lack structure. It also helps them with their public speaking. It helps them with command and control. Teaches them leadership opportunities, because we have folks that rise to the program and go on to be police officers and frankly, all sorts of things in law enforcement, as well as stuff outside of law enforcement. So
We have a former chief in Lacey who started out as an explorer. Dusty started out as an explorer. Yep.
So pretty neat program. And it gets an opportunity for folks to be involved. I just attached 3 more officers to our Explorer post as advisors. And again, our explorers really work on making sure they're reflective of our community. A lot of different perspectives, a lot of experience base, a lot of different faces, a lot of different looks. So we have a really good way to attract and connect with our youth. So going through this, as you know, we started with 52 trained officers in 2023. In November 23, I came to you and said, hey, I still only have 52 trained officers, but we have 20 empty positions. We got to get these folks ready. And that was in 2020, at the end of 2023, and we did a lot of hiring, we did a lot of training. We did 41 we did a lot of interviews. We put 41 people into backgrounds. We did 26 polygraphs, and we hired more than that, but we added 20 people over the last year as far as commissioned officers, as well as some more civilians along the way, replacing some folks. We had some vacancies in records. And so through all that work and moving our program along, now we're at 66 trained officers. Those are street operational officers. So in addition to that, I've got 3 in the field training program right now, as well as I have 1 vacancy, and I have 2 in the academy. Thank you. So yeah, I got a lot going on. But at one point, I think we had 8 people in the field training program. Yeah, my field training officers were just getting burnt out like crazy. I'd use corporals to train and everything else, but we're really putting out some good officers. They're doing amazing things. I just got a report from one of my detectives, Mike Caronto, who you guys all know, just commented on a brand new officer's a sexual assault report he took, and he was so impressed with the quality and the depth of this in detail in this report that the officer had written. And the officer's just brand new. I just gave him his 1-year pin. And he said, this is by far one of the most detailed and comprehensive reports I've seen. It's a detective level report, and it was written by a 1-year officer. That says a lot to the training program and to the competency of our officers. We really work toward, in our training program, not to eat our young. Some training programs aren't happy unless they wash out 40% of their people. They think that's the measure of competency of a training program. I don't believe in eating our young. I want people to be successful. And as long as you're learning and failing forward, we're going to keep you. And we're going to allow you to keep increasing and improving and developing that expertise. Right? So we put a lot of investment in our folks. And so we really talk about finding a path of success for our folks. And whether that means a different training officer, a different perspective, there's a lot of ways to do what we do, right? People often ask me about, hey, who are you looking for in an officer? What are you looking for? I said, well, I don't have a cardboard cutout of an officer. I just want somebody of good character who brings order to chaos. That's it. That's what I'm looking for, right? And by and large, that's what we have. And we have folks in the military, we have folks from college, we have folks that came up through the community and have neither of those 2 things, and they excel as officers because they meet that criteria. They have good character and they bring order to chaos. Okay, so we're doing really well as far as staffing and bringing people up, having trained folks. Our community resource unit is fully staffed. As you know, we had a sergeant and 1 officer for the longest time. Now actually we have 3 officers in there. That third officer that's in there currently, they'll be going to the proactive unit with the Tri-Cities I mentioned earlier as of July 1st. pretty excited about that, and so is he. So that unit is working on a number of things. They do the community outreach, they do all the social media, they do the engagement, supplement by everybody else, but they do the lead on that. Trip runs that unit a little bit, but that's okay. They say they run Trip, but it's the other way around.
Is the Tri-Cities Academy an overflow for the Burien? Or is that how that works? Like if
So
it's full and then they go to Tri-Cities?
No, the Tri-City PROAC unit, that's Tumwater, Olympia, and us.
Oh, okay.
That's a
I thought
proactive unit.
Okay, I was thinking that you were saying the academy over in Eastern Washington.
No,
Pasco.
No, that's different. That's the different Tri-City. No.
All right.
They stole the name. No, we're different. Okay, so our community resource unit is fully staffed. We're pretty excited about that. Our school resource program is fully staffed. We have one officer assigned full-time to each high school now. Again, we were down to 2 school resource officers and backfilling that 3rd spot with overtime. Now those are just 3 full-time officers. So we're pretty excited about that. We have, as of January 1st, our traffic unit is back. It's back. That's good. So we have 2 officers, one on blue team, one on gold team, so you'll have one here every single day. So we're excited about that, and they're out there working. We're approved for a WASPIC grant for 2 new radar units. So we just did the PO for that today. So we're getting 2 grant-funded radar units for two of our traffic vehicles. So we're excited about that. And again, our mobile outreach team, which I've described already, again, is fully staffed. So we're pretty excited about that as well. And coming in Q2, I'm very excited to announce our digital forensic unit will be up and running. We are finishing in the background of our first digital forensic analyst. And that person will be an expert in processing of electric devices and video. And they are currently doing the job in another state. And when they finish, I'll be happy to tell you all about them. I'm very excited because they're very well qualified. And they'll come to our unit. They'll be coming here starting, like I said, in April. And they're going to bring a whole new capacity to us that we don't currently have as far as being able to mine data and then organize it for use in investigations. Right now, we have detectives that are doing it, and it's really not a good use of their time. I need officers to do officer stuff. I need civilians to do civilian stuff. So we're going to have a subject matter expert working on our digital forensics. So we're very excited about that.
That person will be a civilian then?
Yes, that is a civilian position. And as well, we're having our embedded IS technician that we've had in the past. We're getting a new one. That person will start in Q2. They're starting here with IS, and then for a couple weeks onboarding, then they'll come to us and be embedded at the police department. And my folks are so excited for that because they're going to get their new laptops when that new person comes on board, because IS doesn't want to do the rollout. They want the new person to do the rollout. So they're pretty excited because they want the new laptops.
So with all these new officers and the supply chain issues that we've had with fleet, how are those 2 things coming together? Or are they not?
We're working hard. Yes, working hard. We have 4 cars being built out now. We have 1 almost done and 3 in line to be built out. We have the physical car. Now all the stuff has to go into the car.
That's that place off Yelm Highway?
Yes, that's one of them. Yeah. But there's stages. There's graphics, there's the cage, there's the electronics, there's the radio, and then there's the cameras.
Gotcha.
So it's got to go through all those different steps. It's not a one-stop shop, unfortunately. We had that for a while, but that went away. Just the company went out of business. Yeah.
So a question came up with the digital forensic unit. I'm thinking we don't have the person now, and in the future, something could happen, right? Do you think it's possible to have some sort of like a internship with the local college that might have computer classes or cross-train officers? Like in the Marine Corps, we had to do 3 different things because we didn't have enough people to do them all individually. Maybe cross-train detectives, so if there became a gap again, that could be covered. Or
I have detectives and officers that are trained in this capacity. I would prefer they not do that. They could do it, and they have done it and are doing it, but I prefer that they not. I see this person will be able to get the download of, say, someone's phone records and cell phone data and tower data, and then mine that data and find out what we actually need. I don't know if you've ever got cell phone data before. It is really reams of stuff that you got to try to make heads and tails out of. in a cogent manner, so you can present it to a prosecutor, let alone to a jury, so they can understand it. It's not like TV. And so it takes a lot of expertise to data mine and organize that data properly and make it defensible so that when you go to court, the defense isn't saying, oh, you just made that up. It's like, no, here's the data, this is how I got to where we're at. So having someone with that expertise to present that information is going to be really key. And the person that we're bringing on board has that. Now, I can tell, not to get ahead of the race too far, but this person is being brought on board to stand up the unit. And where that unit goes is really kind of a function on what our needs are going to be. And we got to start walking before we start running. And right now, we're still working on baby steps. But yeah, we're going to get there, so we're pretty excited. It's bringing in 21st century stuff, so I'm pretty excited. Okay, and so that's where they're there. Workload. Let's talk about 2024 workload. All right, like I said, preliminary data only. Can change, subject to change, but I want to give you a little inkling on where we're at. And it's going to be kind of broad strokes, but just to let you know where we're at. Population as November 2024 was 60,210. It's more now, but we'll say it's 60,000 for then. We've had over 42,000 incidents in 2024 that officers responded to and handled. That's a lot of activity.
Do we get a lot of overnight activity?
We get a lot of activity all the time.
24/7 activity?
Sergeant Bartz, I get pass-ons from all my sergeants, and he talked about a period of time when he was working a swing shift where they handled 126 calls like a 3-hour period. Yeah, they got hammered. It's just, and there's times when like it's just a ghost town, nothing, it's raining, it's windy, there's a sagebrush going across Martin Way, nothing's going on, right? But a lot of the time it's a topic, there's stuff going on. So, and not to give away, I'll keep the last part. I'll get to that part too. Okay, so 21, we did just short of 2,100 arrests this past year. That's an increase of 26%. Why? How'd that happen, Chief? I got more officers now. They can arrest more people, right? That's good. Included,
Someplace to take them.
and we have somewhere to take them. That's important too. On an aside, we were averaging 15 beds a night at Nisqually. We're now at 21 beds a night at Nisqually. So that was part of my budget request. Hey, we got to increase our budget for Nisqually. So we did, so thank you. All right, so overall crime is down by 10%. Our crime rate is 50 crimes per 1,000. I don't know if we can get it much lower. I mean, these guys are working hard. I mean, when I talk to them, I don't know how you guys did that. That is low. We were 56, bless you. We were 56 crimes per 1,000 last year, the year before that, in 2023. Pretty significant, frankly. So,
I've noticed seriously increased patrols. I'm seeing way more
yeah,
Lacey police cars than I've ever seen in this last probably 6 to 9 months.
it makes a difference when you add cops. Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah.
That
And-
50 includes both property and violent crimes?
Yeah, that's overall crime. Yep.
Overall.
So, okay, and so collision rate was about the same year over year. We did see a reduction in injury collisions and a slight increase in fatal collisions. And I say that because it's a small data set, so it's really hard, when percentages get really kind of wonky. But your injury collisions, the decrease by almost 11%, that is significant. And I think that's a function of as you get new officers, while they're in training, a lot of the practice stuff they do is traffic enforcement. So you're seeing a lot more officers, you're seeing a lot more cars, you're seeing them doing a lot more traffic stops. And that tends to have an impact on our primary causal factor, which is speed, right? So, okay, and citations were up about 17%, and DUI arrests were up about 10%.
Drug-related arrests,
Yes,
what kind of drugs are we seeing?
methamphetamine and fentanyl, by and large. So, okay, so talk a little bit about inside stats. Our training hours, 8,000 hours. That's an increase. I believe we increased that by 15%. I would check that number, but it was a huge increase over the prior year. And that, again, that's a function of having additional officers go into training and offering 1 day of training every month for every single officer. They get a full 10.7 hours of training each month. So that's pretty incredible. We by far are one of the few agencies doing that, and it goes towards our level of professionalism. And frankly, also our light use of force, which I'll get to in a second.
So
Also,
when we have our own training facility,
Yep.
those 8,000 hours, the cost of that 8,000 hours, will that be reduced? Or is that just me dreaming that?
well, I don't know. A function of that is, yes, there's going to and from other sites. And yes, as part of that, because I have to pay rental fee for city buildings.
Yep.
Even though they're city buildings, I have to pay rental on them. So that cost will go down, but there may be other costs. So, I mean, it's a give and a take, so I don't know it's going to reduce cost dramatically. It's still a function of per officer cost for training. So, also, so moving on here, police collisions were down by 50%. Hey, that's awesome. That makes me excited, right? When cops aren't crashing. So that's awesome. That's also.
Crashed into.
Exactly. It's also part of our fleet preservation plan, because we need cars. So by them not getting crashed into or crashing, very, very important. Our police pursuits, 7%. We had a reduction of about 30% over 2023 into 2024. Of those 7, they were all within policy. Majority of them, the officer was called themselves off rather than having a supervisor in the pursuit when it got hairy, right? Or took the guy into custody. So pretty impressive stats, and again, that goes towards our training of our personnel. 50 uses of force, and I have to emphasize those 50 uses of force, the majority of them are holds, meaning that they're done to prevent the person from escaping and to gain control of them. So it's taking the person to the ground, it's putting them in a wrist lock or a bar arm hold, or holding them on the ground, putting them in a wrap, safety device. That's the vast majority of our uses of force. 45 of the 50 are that type. Yes.
How does that compare with previous years?
It's an increase, but because we're involved in more incidents and because we're involved in 26% more arrests, it's about a 25% increase,
From
In uses of force?
2023,
which go with,
27% increase in staff.
correct.
Yeah.
So when you look at the increased number of officers and the increased number of events they're involved in, it's still consistent with our light use of force. So it's an increased number per se.
You're not
but the
seeing a
percentage-
per officer increase in force? Just a
We're not
per,
seeing that.
like, as the growth of the workforce grows, yeah.
Correct.
So in past reports, you've talked about minimal use of force and never fired a shot. Is that one of your statistics this year?
Yes. So, as I said, 45 of these were basically keeping someone from escaping. Of the other 5, 2 are taser deployments. 1 is a punch or a kick, and the other 2 is pointing a firearm at the person but not discharging the firearm. So, as you may have seen the video recently where a suspect had a firearm, was pointing it at traffic and then pointed at one of my officers. Well, he had his weapon out, but he didn't fire at him. It turned out to be an airsoft gun what the guy had. But again, that was an incident where he pointed a firearm at the suspect, rightfully so.
So that's considered use of force?
When you come up on target and point your firearm at somebody, that is a use of force, and we count that. And we had 2 of those in
It
2024.
was following after the firearm was pointed at them.
Well, in that
It's
circumstance,
just an escalation.
yes. Well, it's a response. I don't know if it's an escalation. Okay, so just looking at the math really quickly, again, 50 uses of force over 42,000 incidents. That's like 0.0011904776. By the way, my staff caught me on my numbers, by the way, because Chief, that's not, they got to change the number on that one. I said, okay, thank you. I had a misplaced zero somewhere. And then we had, so of the 2,100 arrests divided by 42,000 incidents, so about 5% of our overall incidents result in an arrest. And of the arrests, we use force about 2% of all arrests that were done. That's how that all breaks out, which is a pretty minimal deal overall. Again,
Do we have repeat offenders doing it in that 42,000, right? So.
Oh,
or
yeah.
It just like the same guy and we know who you
oh,
are, we know what you're
people
doing.
I call habitual offenders, yeah, we have habitual offenders.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about demographics a little bit. So as you know, we have one of the most diverse, actually, I believe the most diverse police department or law enforcement agency in the county and in the region. And as you can see, we're reflective of our community. In fact, we're a little more diverse than our community. We have a great representation of all our demographics. There's not a whole lot more to say than I haven't said in the past, but we have a really good, yes?
I mean, one of the things that, I don't know how you collect this data. Is it upon hire or is it after hire?
Upon hire.
Yeah. I think it's telling that the rate of unknown is very low. I don't know if this is mandatory, but a lot of the data in the demographic area that I look at is voluntarily given. And I think it's another one of those litmus tests of culture. If you have a really high rate of unknown, it means people don't really trust what you're going to do with the data, right? They're not comfortable disclosing. And so the fact that this rate is so low means that a lot of your officers have been comfortable filling out the demographic form to self-identify. And that's good.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times you don't know who a suspect might respond to, right? And if if you're coming to talk to me and you've got a gun on your hip, maybe if you look like me, I might be a little cooler with you, or whatever the case may be. Or I'll never forget the story that you told about the guy at McDonald's and the female officer who he would talk to, but the male officer said he wouldn't talk to, right? And so having this diversity in this department, I feel like it's critical to the success, some of the success that you pointed out earlier in this presentation.
Absolutely. But, and it's how people appear, how people approach issues. I have some folks who will not, will contact someone in the field and they will not talk to a military veteran, right? Nope, you're too regimented, you're too structured. So I bring in someone who is less structured, more of a free-thinking individual, think like a Jimmy Williams, and who has the gift of gab, and they bond and they talk and things are great, no problem. And he'll, okay, I'll do what you need to do. Okay, officer, I'll go along, I'll go with my program, no problem. Sometimes you need a tall officer, sometimes you need a short officer, sometimes you need a fat officer, you need a thin officer. Which is funny, we were doing a walk through the building, and the part about that, we were trying to get through the metal studs they put in for the framing, and one of my officers had a hard time kind of getting through the framing. He goes, "Oh, come on, you're kidding me, right?" Which is kind of funny, but yeah, it takes all kinds, all approaches. It's just like I said, it's someone who brings order to chaos and has good moral character, and they come in every flavor you can imagine, which is what we're looking for. Okay, as we move forward, talk about gender dynamics. Again, this is the entire department. It's 30% female, 69% male. Again, that covers all of our employees, right? And we're looking at commissioned officers, we're around 22, 24%. Female at this point, our goal is 30% by 2030. We'll make that goal. I'm very confident we'll make that goal. This Thursday, I'll be watching Lieutenant Shannon Barnes' graduation from FBI National Academy on Thursday morning. Pretty excited about that. So she's been there for the last 10 weeks with that program, so she'll be bringing that information back. So again, she was our first lieutenant, so pretty excited about that. And then I'll be interviewing the 3 lieutenants to figure who's going to be going to professional standards, our new administration lieutenant. So there's that.
Is she the first to go to the FBI, the 10-week?
Recently. She's been, we kind of had a hiatus of several years, part of COVID, part of, for some other reasons. But several of my officers have gone, like Jamie Newcomb's been to there, Lieutenant Newcomb, and a number of sergeants and other folks have been to it. I believe Commander Upton's gone through it. I knew Jim Mack had gone through it.
That's right.
Chris Ward may have gone to it. So, I mean, a lot of folks have gone to it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Our activity analysis, again, we look at to see if there's any bias in our contacts. And so for field interviews, you're looking at self-initiated activities such as field interview and traffic. They closely reflect the racial percentages of Lacey's general population. Now let's look at what we're using. We're using the 2020 census as our barometer, right? I'm not sure that's the most accurate barometer that we have. It's 5 years old. It's a voluntary census for the most part. Yes, compulsory, but it's voluntary. And is that reflective of everybody we're coming in contact with? Because you have people, not only residents of Lacey, but you have folks from all over the county coming through Lacey, right? So I'm not sure that's most reflective. And again, traffic tickets, those go by and large to people driving cars. And is that the same population that's our resident population? Yes and no. Some people don't drive. Some people take buses. And, so again, the numbers aren't going to be perfect because it depends on what your comparison data is, right? So you're never going to find perfect alignment, but I think that in broad strokes, I think it shows pretty good alignment. And going on to arrests, again, your census data isn't going to be totally reflective of everybody who commits crime. Your data set should be all people who commit crime, right? And again, that data set's not going to just be people living in Lacey, it's going to be people from the county, the region, and beyond, right? So it's never going to be completely aligned with our census data, but even saying that, we are pretty much in alignment with that information. So, again, and also, the other part of arrest is you have compulsory arrest where the officer has no discretion, such as DUI, warrants, and domestic violence, right? So again, that skews numbers as well. Okay, let's talk about our priorities for 2025. Staffing, retention, and training continue to be priority issues for our department. I have one vacancy for an officer. I have no civilian vacancies now. I'm sorry, I have one civilian vacancy. I just had a CSO who's going to become an officer in Snow County. So retaining our officers is really, really important. Part of our value as a department is retaining our highly trained officers. Interesting story. Last year, we had 2 employees leave the department, senior tenured people, about 16 years on a piece. One retired and decided to go on to another agency, a state agency. The other one wanted to seek another larger agency and see how that was. They both decided to come back. And so I was able to reinstate them with the authority granted to me by the city manager. And the value of reinstating a prior employee, when they leave under good circumstances and all that, that's important, is astronomical. One, you get that institutional knowledge back. You just have to update the background from once they left, right? Plus, that agency that took them probably did a background too, so you add on to that. So it's kind of halfway done already. The cost of reinstating an officer with prior service versus a lateral versus an entry level is enormous. Entry level, I'm paying for that employee for 18 months before they can hit the road and be successful. Laterals is at least 4 months plus, depending on how trainable they are and how much they know already and how fast they get to my field training program before they can operate on their own. Versus the 2 folks I brought back, 6 weeks and they were on the road, right? Now understand, everybody who comes through my training program goes through the exact same training program. But as you demonstrate mastery of a topic, we move you on to the next level. If you've been here, you've done it for 16 years, you can demonstrate mastery pretty quick. So they had an inside track there. But very excited that they came back. And also when you bring back an officer, they kind of become your big ambassadors of why it's a good thing to be here. You guys understand how good we got it.
Really not greener on the other side?
Hey!
Grass isn't always greener, huh?
So I'm very excited they came back. In fact, one of them recently made corporal, Jimmy Williams. The other one made detective, so obviously they're excelling and doing great. So pretty excited about that, and so glad they came back. Obviously, they were big parts of the community, and I really talked to them before they left, but they still left. But hey, they came back, so that's good.
I would say that it says a lot about the department and the city also that you won't restrict an employee from trying to better their life. You know what I mean? And it shows because they come back. You know what I mean? So that makes sense. It's how it's supposed to work in the private sector. It's supposed to work in the public sector that way too.
So I had a conversation yesterday with CSO Blevin, who's leaving to go to Snow County to be a deputy. And, because I wanted, hey, how was your experience here? 'Cause he wasn't here too long as a community service officer. And I wanted to know, hey, what'd you like? What didn't you like? Why are you leaving? That kind of thing. It was more of a timing issue. At the time he was testing, we didn't have any vacancies. We're actually filled. And so that job came available, and so that's why he took that job, it turns out. But we had a really good conversation talking about his experience here and that positivity that he got. And one of the great things about our department is that there's parity in the department. And by that I mean, everybody's respected for what they bring to the table and for being willing to provide service, whether you're the car washer or the deputy chief and everything in between, right? Everyone's respected for that level of service they bring and being willing to serve our community. And so there's not commissioned officers up here and civilians down here like in some places I've seen, right? Everyone's respected and treated with respect. And that's one of the things he talked about and he thought was so special about our agency. So, and I always leave that door open. Hey, go over there, do a couple years, keep us in mind, come on back. It's always good. So you always got to be recruiting, right? So the good stuff.
Probably a big recruiter for us too.
So I'll close out with our 25 strategic priorities. Again, staffing, retention, and training. Professional development career path is really big this year. Now that we got folks onboarded, we want to make sure that they understand we're invested in their success and their career development. Whether that's development horizontally through the organization by developing expertise or vertically by going through leadership development. So we're looking there, in-service training focus, which we discussed. Again, crime reduction with a focus on being proactive. So the synergy is being proactive. We can respond to radio calls, and by and large, we've been reactive up until this point. And as you're a new officer, you're taught to be reactive, to respond to radio calls, to do patrol. But now we're going beyond that. Now we're getting to the next level of police work, which is going out and looking for things that don't look right. Let me talk to you, what's going on? And it doesn't mean being aggressive, it means being inquisitive and being curious and learning, your neighborhoods and your communities and what's the norm. When does the trash truck go by? When is the milk delivered? When's that delivery truck show up? And what's the activity at the different warehouses? So then you start saying things that aren't the norm. That, hey, they don't get deliveries that time of day. Why is that truck backed up to that warehouse? That's not normal. Let me go see what's going on over there. And having that inquisitive nature and being engaged in that way in our community. So really working on being proactive. Again, that's both through patrol, CRU, our Tri-City Proactive Unit. We're still working on a name, okay? There's been several that came up. I don't like any of them. So that's kind of where we're at right now, but we'll get there. And then a crime analysis focus, and that includes our digital forensic analysis focus. Really working on our fleet maintenance enhancement. Part of that is car preservation by not crashing them. That's big. But also working with fleet to make sure that our enhancements are correct. We have 8 cars, in addition to the 4 cars I talked about, we have 8 cars in order. So Lord willing, the river don't rise and cars actually start showing up. We'll get them outfitted and we'll start enhancing our fleet there, but they're in the budget. It's just a matter of really getting through the supply chain at this point. And then finally, we have Project 222, which is really part to modernize our logistics and procurement process and our equipment management as we get ready to transition to our new facility. We want to make sure we're not bringing anything we don't need to bring, right? Why move it if you don't need it? So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes?
How's your paper records situation? Speaking of things you'd rather not carry to a new building.
So the new record management system is exciting. We just signed the contract. Tumwater is kind of the lead agency on that for our collective working on this. It's gone through their legal process and it's been approved. So we're kind of doing the big kickoff. So we're about 18 months away from full implementation. So we'll start kind of going through our subject matter experts to try to break the system as it starts coming on board before we fully implement it. And that'll be a big part of our logistics. Part of that paper management.
So we're stuck with paper for now, but in 18 months, there's going to be a better way, hopefully.
Well, we do have quite a bit of electronic work that's done through our MDC and report writing system. However, there are paper records, but not near as many as we used to have, that's for sure. Our records room is pretty small. It's about the size of that coffee room right there. So it's not near as big as I would have thought when I got here. So. And that's records going back to 1967 for certain cases, so, yeah.
One detail that I didn't hear on where you were talking about use of force, were there any serious injuries?
No, there were no serious injuries to officers or to suspects.
Great.
Thank you for that question.
City Manager.
I was going to add, you had mentioned that crime rate in Lacey is actually down about 10%, which is fantastic. Is that a trend like statewide, nationally, or no?
No, sir.
No.
Definitely not.
Didn't think so.
We're third in the nation for crime as a state.
So-
Third in the nation?
Yes, sir.
What kind of crime?
Well, car theft is down, but it's still significantly higher than everywhere else. It's not as high as it was at its peak. So a lot of car theft, a lot of retail theft. Package theft is pretty big throughout the state. Domestic violence, you're seeing a lot more commercial burglary in other areas. That's kind of the stuff that's getting a lot of notice. There's different task forces being stood up for those type of crimes. You're getting some gun-related crime in some of the larger metropolitan areas. That's still fairly rare for us. Hoping it stays that way, but we'll handle what come what may. But for the large part, that's what you're seeing mostly in the larger areas.
Looks like a lot of the training that you implemented over the last couple of years is really paying off.
Yes, sir.
And there is a huge difference between showing up to aggressively police somebody and being inquisitive and, protecting and serving people. It looks like we are doing the latter much better, which I definitely appreciate. I did want to ask you about the new opioid clinic that is opening. And have we established some connective tissue with them to, partner with them for?
You're talking about the one on Pacific?
Correct.
So we were briefed by the tribe when it was first being kind of considered and drawn up and thought of, and as it's gone through its development process. We haven't had any recent conversations. There's been a kind of a change in leadership with the tribe. But as we move forward, I anticipate that we'll be having additional discussions.
There's a couple of different ways for connection to occur. One is there could be some opportunity to connect with the service providers at Maple Court, so I have a direct correlation there. And then also with Councilman Greenstein's work on the opioid abatement council, there should be some connections through that group in terms of funding and delivery services.
Yeah, that was my next question was the Maple Court, and the tribe opioid clinic connection and how we would foster that. And I guess that those talks are kind of paused because of the new tribal leadership.
Well, that, and then waiting for the facility to be completed, and then sitting down and saying, how does that service model work between the two?
Yeah.
And what are the gaps, and how do we address those gaps?
Okay. Chief, you came to us and talked to us about the 2-lieutenant system versus the commander system and how we were making that change and that switch. How do you feel that's going?
I think it's going well. So Commander Mack will officially retire coming up here in May. I have a proclamation for council. He'll be here one night in May. Kind of twisting his arm to get him here. He doesn't want to come, but I'm going to make him come. Because as the mayor has pointed out, he has provided decades of service to this community. And I really want him to be recognized and get his moment of due. But I'm really happy with the transfer. Our last commander, Joe Upton, has done a lot of work helping to develop our newer lieutenants. Like I said, we have 3 now. As he transitions out and when he leaves, that'll bring the opportunity for our 4th lieutenant, which will complete our command staff, our new command staff model with the deputy chief and the 4 lieutenants. And how that'll work, there'll be 2 lieutenant patrol, 1 for each patrol team, blue and gold. There'll be a lieutenant in charge of administration, which is kind of doing logistics, procurement, all the Project 222 stuff. That'll be that lieutenant working on that, as well as working with personnel and training, professional standards, accreditation, those type of things. And then that 4th lieutenant will be in investigations, and they'll provide oversight for both detectives and CRU and SROs and MOT and the PROAC unit and all this different panoply of things that that operation does. So a lot to do.
So 10 days ago, last on Saturday, the Live on Patrol had Thurston County, a little skit on there. Anything, possibly in the future with Lacey on Live Patrol?
I think we have a pretty full plate right now, but I'm pretty pleased with our social media and how it's being perceived by our residents, so I'm pretty pleased with where it's at right now.
So the new system, the new 2-lieutenant system will be stood up by the end of the year?
4 lieutenant.
4 lieutenants.
Sorry, 4-lieutenant system.
Yes. So Commander Upton is scheduled at this point to leave in December, end of this year, and that's when that 4th lieutenant will be brought on board.
Just add another little bit of perspective. Last Thursday, I'm on the Leadership Thurston Board, and last Thursday was the Law and Justice Day for the Leadership Thurston class. And the kickoff that event was the frontline panel, and that was, the frontline panel consisted of officers from all the jurisdictions, the county, Olympia, Tumwater, Yelm, and, or excuse me, not Yelm, the Nisqually Tribe, and City of Lacey. And we had our Sergeant Napoleon Parker was representing the City of Lacey. And, they all articulate very well the challenges and the successes and all the various good programs all the various agencies talked about. But when it got to the whole element of staffing, it was great to hear Sergeant Parker talk about us being fully staffed and the efforts we go beyond, that we take to, for that recruitment strategy. And it's multifaceted. The other agencies, I think the least amount of vacant spaces they had was somewhere in the 10 to 12 range, and they're still struggling trying to keep as well, retain as well as recruit new officers. And especially a lot of the officers coming in are new individuals that have to go through the longer 18-month process. And then it's a testament to the City of Lacey, the work that our police department's done with Chief Armada and Lieutenant Walden and Sergeant Parker, and then recruitment efforts, partnering with our HR department, working together and looking at all different venues to go reach out and talk about the opportunities here at the City of Lacey. So we want to continue that effort to keep those slots full, because again, having that consistency and building that longevity will only create the strength in that community relation with our officers have with the community too.
It's a real testament, though, to what a great, to a great department that's well-run, has good leadership. I mean, it's been a long time and a lot of work on your part and your staff's part to get there, because we spent a lot of years that we weren't fully staffed, a lot of years. So that's amazing work.
To the city manager's point, I would be remiss if I did not mention it's a team effort. I can't tell you. So HR has done yeoman's work through both current staff and prior staff have really worked hard with us to make sure that we're going through public safety testing, and we're taking some of the avenues there. We're getting publicized through their social media. We're paying part of their testing fee that we were able to do that. That was through the help of Troy Wu. They found a mechanism to make that happen because there wasn't a mechanism. So it's finance, it's HR, it's the city manager's office, it's our social media, it's our communication team, it's the police department restructuring. I mean, it's all those things coming together to make that work cohesively. And so, like I say, it really is a great place to work because we all do work together so well.
And then as we grow as a community or annex or any of those type of things, there's also work at the state legislature. They're working on looking at different funding sources or grants for expansion. That just means we're going to continue to have to do that work, as well as use the benefits of our new training facility space. Kind of going back to your question about does that reduce our cost? Not necessarily, but it makes, we have a facility designed for the training purposes. It creates a little bit more capacity and proximity so that we don't have officers far away from the community. They're in the community training and be able to respond quickly if something comes up. So it just works well all the way around.
So as we, collect Prop 1 dollars and we start building that reserve and relying less on our reserves, and is there, have we figured out a crossover point to where we won't be using reserves?
Well, we currently are not for operations. We brought the reserves to build the facility. The Prop 1 dollars are dedicated to those positions and supporting equipment. As that grows, of course, as the police station is built and finished, we're going to have to build into its maintenance cost, and that's where some of that capacity would probably go towards, as well as making sure that we're adequately staffed for our community.
Okay. Councilmember Goss.
Could you give us an update on move-in time for the new station and when the training center is going to be up and running?
Depends on the generator. No, I'm kind of kidding on that, but, we're on schedule, we're doing great, knock on wood. This time next year, we should be moved in. We should be operational, we should be moved in this time next year is what we're looking at. The variable is there's a large generator that's needed as the backup supply, and that's currently being produced, has to be made to order. We took over a generator from another project that wasn't going through for whatever reason, and that's helping us meet our deadline. Otherwise, we would have kind of be put at the end of the line, and we weren't sure when we were going to get it. We were able to take over a project that was already kind of started already. That's helping us meet our deadline. So, but everything else is right on schedule and doing well. We're very happy with KMB and all the associate contractors. They're very communicative. Deputy Chief is working a lot on this. He has gotten more OSHA classes about firing ranges than he ever wanted to go to, I guarantee you that. But also, we have an entire team going over fabrics and swatches and surfaces and tones. You know, my crayon box had 16 colors in it, and so, you know, I'm not the best person for colors, so I have people that do that, thank God. But it's going along very well. I'm very pleased with the developments. We've been taking folks over on occasional walkthroughs, kind of get a sense of size and scale. And by and large, everybody is just like, wow, we can't wait. So, pretty excited about it. The training center will be actually done a little bit before the main station is done, but again, we're all waiting on the generator. So nothing will be able to be used until that final occupancy
Is
permit.
the generator for the training facility or for both?
Both.
So it's one generator that's
Yes.
for both?
Yep.
And had to be specially made, the generator?
Yeah,
You know, just buy a
it's
generator.
big enough that there's not like one off the shelf, yeah.
Is it a diesel generator?
Trailer.
Yeah.
They don't have those.
We waited 2 years for the generator for the building that I work in for the state, because we have this giant generator and it violates Orca's clean air standards, and it's a diesel generator. We have to have it because we have to be able to operate the elevators if the power goes out. But we're finally getting the new one, and we're going to be saying goodbye to this generator, so, you know, keep that in mind in case the one that we've ordered didn't come through.
I keep looking on eBay, I tell you.
It took like a year and a half longer than it was supposed to, so I hope yours doesn't. I hope the one for
Right
Lacey
now,
doesn't.
we're on schedule and everything is a go and we're looking good, so very pleased about that.
Thank you. Thank you for your report.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, next item on our agenda are development guidelines and public work standards briefing. Tom Stiles, our development review manager, will be presenting. Hello.
Yes. We're good now. Tonight I brought Brandon McAllister. He's one of our senior utility engineers. He's usually buried down at the maintenance department, but he is the expert for all of the water and sewer that we'll be talking about tonight. I mean, he can answer any of those questions. And I also brought Joey Etter. He's also in development review. He's been working with me for 23 years, and he knows probably as much as I do now on all this stuff. So I just brought them in for support. So this is more of a briefing. I mean, I was watching these the presentations. I'm like, well, this is more just kind of like, we sent out all the information with your packet and hope that you had a chance to look at it. And what I was going to do is go through the items that I felt were like the biggest highlights on it. But if there's anything in there that you want to go over that I'm not going to go over, we can definitely do that. So let me get to my staff report. Little glitch.
There is a lot in your packet that you uploaded.
Yeah.
and, Can be exhaustive.
No, I have it, mine, I have it all earmarked, yeah. So, sorry, just give me a second. Do you guys need to go to the bathroom after all this?
No, take your time. There was so much in it, as I was reading through it, I realized in order for me to remember, I was gonna have to take just screenshots of everything when I got to a question. And I think I ended up with somewhere in the neighborhood of
Leave it there, did I?
20 of them. Yeah.
Well, let me help you. Like, one thing I'll do is, before I get it all mixed up, is I did, and this is kind of like a last minute idea. One of the things, there it is, thank you. This is there are, a last minute thought I thought was, let's bring in some of the places where we're going to get into where we have root intrusion. And so I brought some pictures.
All right.
So the last time we were here was in 2017. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's been almost 8 years since we did our last guideline update. So the previous city manager said, do not come to me any sooner than 5 years. So I held that up, and we made that.
Did I have another 3?
Huh? Yeah, you got another. You almost. Anyway, just for the folks out there, I was just going to do a quick thing. Development guidelines, they're the document that we use for all of our projects. So it's a manual that engineers, developers, everybody looks at to see, how do I do the project, okay? What we have in this update is, previously you've already seen through community and economic development, we took chapter 1 through. So that's been revised, and it will be incorporated into this update. We did not make any changes to chapter 2, which is grading. The chapters that we are looking at tonight are chapter 3, the public works considerations, chapter 4, transportation, chapter 5, stormwater, 6, water, and 7, sewer. We're not making any changes to reclaimed water because we still need to go through and do a reclaimed water comp plan. So that's kind of our priority. So reclaimed is just staying stagnant. And then appendix, there's not really revisions except maybe some updates, like currently right now, all of our revisions are housed in appendix A. That'll get cleared out and we'll start over again this next cycle. What appendix A is, if something comes up between revisions, then we will take it through the process, get it approved, and house it there so that we don't have to update the whole manual, over and over again. So. So all these chapters have already been through the Planning Commission the first time. So they've looked at it, given us some comments. We've incorporated their comments into what you're seeing, what was sent out to you. This also went out to, so I sent out 35 individual emails to developers and engineers, consultants, to have them look at the changes and get comments from them. Included in that, I sent it out to Intercity Transit, I sent it out to Lacey Fire District 3, Master Builders, North Thurston Public Schools, St. Martin's, Lot, and some of our Thurston County representatives. From those, we also sent out, we gave everybody like a 3-week review period for this. We also did something we haven't done in the past, is we did a Facebook posting and a Instagram posting so that we could reach out to the general public, and we posted the guideline changes on the website and then gave them the path to get to them and review them. So anyway, from all that effort, we ended up getting 7 responses. So it was a lot of work, but the 2 people we did hear from that with most of the responses were from Lot and from Lacey Fire District number 3. So currently what we're doing is the review period closed last week. It was on March 6th. And so we're just now getting into those changes so that next time we come to you, or actually before we go to the Planning Commission for the public hearing, we'll have those comments incorporated into the guidelines. So when it comes to you for approval, if they say, yes, let's recommend approval, then you'll have the latest and greatest with everything in it. So getting into it, Chapter 3, the two things I really wanted to get into was, one is the removal of the memorandum of understanding. It's for development with the city of Lacey in our urban growth area. So this is an agreement that's been in place for 20-plus years. And currently, it needs some massaging. We need to get back together with Thurston County and say, okay, let's work on this process. Because we want to make sure that the process is the easiest for developers and engineers to get through. And right now, whenever you go through a project, and I'm not looking at anybody, but you do a project in the county, and it's difficult. So we're going to go back to the table and have negotiations and figure out how can we make this better. So that memorandum of understanding is also, I believe, housed in our LMC, our Lacey Municipal Code. So it's redundant, and we thought it really shouldn't be in the guidelines anyway, so it's coming out. That's one of the major changes there. The second change that's in Chapter 3 is currently we do not require, if you bring civil drawings in for review, we do not have any, you don't pay anything up front. So we've had several projects over the last few years where we've gone all the way through the process and the project never happened. I mean, it just evaporated. So we didn't collect anything for staff time. So we're proposing that there will be a deposit. We don't have the deposit amount figured out yet. It's just the language is going in there that there could be a deposit, and what it'll be is it will be collected and then applied to your fees, and then if the project doesn't move forward, and we'll just retain the fees for the work that we did. And we'll determine it on, what's a fair amount for what we usually do for a general review, so. Those are
And
two.
if the project does go through,
Then it just
it'll be absorbed, right?
Yep, it just applies directly to the fees. Our fees are based on a lineal foot basis for the utilities that we're looking at, or the road frontage, and then the extra is if there's more review that's needed, it's on a per hour basis. So all this would just go directly onto that.
Is it easier, maybe it's not really comparable, but is it easier to change LMCs than it is to change these development guidelines?
I think it's probably the same process, so about the same. So what happens with this is if we get to the end and you recommend approval of the guidelines, and it gets adopted by ordinance, and then we just track the ordinances on, that's how this gets codified.
Just thinking if we have the MOU in both these guidelines and in the LMC, if we're going to renegotiate the MOU to kind of update everything, having it in the LMC, it sounds like that might be a little cleaner than having it in both places or just having it in the guidelines.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so that's Chapter 3. Chapter 4, this is why I brought the pictures. So in the pictures, what you're seeing is the first several pictures are showing you water meter boxes and how the roots have grown to the water meter boxes. Okay, the next several ones, which get even greater, are like the one of this monstrous tree root that was in a step tank that got taken out. And then you have some showing how they're growing around the lids of the step tanks, how they're crushing our service boxes, and then again, the last one's just showing a bunch of them that are just filled, that they filled into it. Next ones are showing like streetscapes, again, showing the roots going towards some of the utilities, and also trying to illustrate, the need to keep trees away from where the streetlights are.
It looks
So-
like this would institute a 10-foot rule.
Yes, so that was one thing that I was going to get specifically into is, so to prevent root invasion, street trees shall be located 10 feet from water meter boxes, step service boxes, step tanks, And street trees should also be placed 10 feet from driveways, sight distance, streetlights, fire hydrants, because we have to get there to fight the fires. And then finally, they should be placed where the crowns don't impede on the street lighting, so it doesn't block the lighting. So those are the rule that we're really looking at. Now, what happens with that, and this may be more of a discussion, but when you start looking at that, where the street trees are going to go on a streetscape, it gets very limited. Yeah, like Rick was holding up one that is kind of showing you, there's not much space when you start looking at all that. So this probably will precipitate more of a discussion of,
Decreased canopy.
yeah, what do we want to do with street trees? Being Tree City USA, what's that going to look like? Are we going to look at our lots and come up with other ways to lay out our lots, like maybe, have alley-loaded lots where we have, parking and the street trees on the front where it's able to occur then, when you don't break it up with all the driveways. So that's the main issue with that. And then the other thing I highlighted on here is, in there, we've also, we are spending, not exaggerating, and Rick can look at me and growl, but millions of dollars on, doing our repair of, like, the heaved sidewalks and all that. So what we did is about, I'm going to say, because time goes fast, probably 5 years ago, we talked to Kevin McFarland, and we had him come up with the proper street tree for the planter strip width. And we've been putting those in for years. So now whenever Joey and Mike and I, when we look at the plans, we're making sure that the right tree is in there, so that we're not going to have this problem in the
Are those
future.
great trees working? I mean, is it making the difference? Are they really the right trees, I guess is the question.
I think they are. So here's the difference, is like, what we had before is, it was a difference of what we wanted to accomplish. So in the past, we were doing everything per the urban forestry plan. And so part of that had these trees in the planter strip, but it didn't take into account what that was going to do for the sidewalks. So now these trees, I think, are accomplishing the goal, but they may not be accomplishing as much for the urban forestry plan. So you're going to get a presence of trees, but maybe not that whole canopy that you wanted in that area.
And so this will be a key policy decision of council, because this is where you get the convergence of several different policies and goals of the city and the community. Safe sidewalks, walkable sidewalks, tree canopies, street trees for streets, curbside character and appeal, and then also your infrastructure maintenance and everything that goes on along with it. And so when you start looking at some of these restrictions of 10-foot separations and the street lighting, pretty soon on these, when you start getting housing projects that are on some very small lots, you start running out of room to make everything work. And trees being very important, they also are living organic things, are going to go for the path of least resistance, get the nutrients they need. So council's going to need to give, at some point, some direction on this of, okay, how do you balance those things? And maybe there are other ways to achieve some of these goals.
I think it's worth us looking at some different options, because it's not better for the urban forestry plan if we plant a tree and then it grows, and then we have to cut it down because it's lifting the sidewalk up. Like, that's not better, right? So we have to find a tree that meets some of our canopy goals while not taking over our utility boxes. So if we have to pick a tree that maybe doesn't grow as fast or have the same level of coverage and shade that it casts, but we're not going to have to cut it down in 5 years because it's lifting up the sidewalk, that's probably still better.
And your list of trees, I think it was like Exhibit 7 or something, it was extensive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think at one point we talked about, trees that's, the roots are more likely to grow downward as opposed to sprawling outward.
Right.
And it seems like we were able to achieve that in some areas, and it's been working out pretty good.
Yeah.
You also have specifications for planting trees with root barrier type features, those type of things, but also it's soil dependent too, because sometimes to on the soil, will also affect root growth. And then the other options too are looking at, development design, look at the urban forestry plan and where do you achieve your canopies in, various areas throughout the community and open space. And Vanessa may have some more to weigh in on some of the things that they've been looking at in the land use side of things through community economic development.
Cool.
Thanks for letting me just jump in here really quick, and thank you, Tom. So I'll just add a little color. We took a fun field trip with Public Works and CED out to some existing developments, and we got a tape measure out, and we rolled all these distance out, and we counted how many street trees would be left on the street when we were done. And in some of those neighborhoods with alley access, we had a couple of street trees left, maybe 2 on a block. When there was driveways of front-loaded lots with about, 40-foot wide lot, there was no trees left. So ultimately, that's really what we're talking about from a policy conversation. I think some of the changes to how we develop land, meaning what size is the lot, how do we have vehicle access to those lots, can be handled through CED code amendments, which would be outside the work that Tom has here before you today. So if there's, if that's the direction of council, those are things we can take into consideration when we look at updating some of our rules and regulations after the comprehensive plan. Obviously, there'll be a window of time here in between maybe the adoption of these standards and potential future adoption of other standards that would allow for more space in our right-of-way. But those are things to kind of think about when we're looking at these standards that Tom's bringing forwards and then future standards that we can bring forwards in terms of our development, subdivision, rules and regulations.
Which is interesting because we literally just made a tree canopy rule, last year?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Is it 2 years now?
Something like that.
Okay.
Well, I know Scott Egger showed me recently a map of, I guess they went around the city and found where all the heated sidewalks were. And I forget the number, but I think there were over 10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right,
did.
wasn't it? I mean, it's a huge number.
We hired a consultant to do an inventory, look at, based on percentage of gaps or size of gaps.
Yeah.
To identify the worst and so we can focus our work on dealing with those first. And it is extensive, but again, that's not unique. Most cities of any age have that because,
Yeah.
again, it's living things with solid barriers. But we do want to make sure we're addressing those things that create accessibility issues or liability issues. And so that's the purpose of that element, or that work and inventory. But again, going forward, these are the type of things that's going to be in front of council, especially on, our design standards and development guidelines, design standards, and our development standards to figure out how we can bridge those things so we can still maintain some of that quality and environmental goals as well as some of the infrastructure needs.
I noticed these boxes are composite, right? Is there not a tree-proof box on this planet?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's when we could do more research on to see if there's something that is more resistant to roots, but.
They go through foundations, man.
Yeah.
And those are bottomless, right? That,
Yeah.
it's just soil on the bottoms.
Yeah, so they're going to find a way.
That's true.
They're going to go in, out. It's
Just a couple more numbers for you is that we're talking about, our program right now for sidewalks is like 2 approach. We have a sidewalk lifter, and right now we do lift about 300 to 400 panels a year. And then the other approach is the total replacement. So it comes through the Transportation Benefit District. And basically we have $500,000 a year that's on just total replacement of streets. We go to our worst roads that are the most heave and go, okay, here's where we're going to do it this year. And we go replace the sidewalk, replace the trees, replant them, put the root barrier, make sure we have the appropriate tree for the planter strip width, and away we go,
So it sounds like with what Vanessa was saying about, measuring it out and finding that, in the end, we weren't going to have any trees left with instituting this 10-foot rule.
Yes.
And if that's the case, I'm not sure how to say it. So if we change it to this, and these are standard size lots, these are what, 0.18,
These are,
0.20?
most of these are about 4,000, you think? Yeah, so that's where the developers are right now, is about 4,000 square foot. 5,000 or bigger, you know, so I just did a project in Thurston County, Manor House, and they were all 4,000 square foot lots, and the only place I could do trees were on ends where it wasn't where you had driveways and all that. So on phase one, it was like, I want to say 130 lot subdivision, I had 4 trees.
Okay.
And so that's the problem with these smaller lots and with, this was a step neighborhood. So it's a little better whenever you have gravity sewers, but whenever you have the step sewer systems where you have a tank that's going in the yard, it really limits where you're going to put a tree. So, and again,
These are a
Transition,
little bit less than an eighth
planting
of
the
an acre.
tree in the actual yard, I mean, you know,
4,000.
but having uniform
0.12.
code on that, you know what I mean?
They do require, so even the county has a requirement for, I believe, 1 street tree or 1 tree per lot. So now what you're seeing is the trees are going in the backyards.
Right.
So I was looking at the landscape plan, I was like, okay, where are we getting our 1 tree per lot? And they're going in the backyards. So,
You know, when I was looking at this, I thought about that. I'm sorry, Robin. And I thought, okay, if they go in the backyard, are we concerned about, then it becomes like, is this gonna rip up my fence, right? And
Or
so,
leaves in your neighbor's yard.
yeah.
There were, so several trees between my house and the neighbor's house, and there was a tree that I wanted to actually pour a concrete pad over there. And, you know, we dug it out, found out that the tree root was growing along the stem wall. Contractor said, had you not done this project, that thing would have cracked your foundation.
Right.
Right. So if we're dealing with 4,000 foot lots, and with that size of lot, which is, I don't know if that's a standard size lot now, I think the one I was talking about is 0.18, now we're talking about 0.1215, something along those lines. And we institute this rule, then we wouldn't have any trees on the fronts of those properties, period.
Yeah.
Like, one of the reasons we have an urban tree canopy plan is because it keeps the temperature down in the summertime, right?
Yep.
It cools the sidewalk, it cools the cement in neighborhoods, and it reduces the negative impacts of heat.
Yeah.
And we don't reap those benefits if in the front of all the houses in a dense housing development, there's a bunch of concrete because you've got big driveways and big sidewalks and a cul-de-sac and no trees. It's going to be really hot, and that's going to have negative impacts on the people who live there
Right.
that they may not anticipate, right? So I'm concerned about us not building trees or into the plans when we have our development standards for those kinds of neighborhoods in the front of the houses.
I agree. I mean, it is you're right. So, yeah, the best thing we have right now is we have open space traction, 10% open space, we have 5% tree track. So that's where we're getting most of our urban canopy right now. But yeah, it's, when we're seeing these tight lots, and I want to emphasize it's especially with our step sewer systems, which is everything in the county pretty much that we're looking at, we're missing the trees. So, and that's another conversation that, you know, if we can collaborate with our folks at Thurston County, we may be able to come up with the standards that we want to see to preserve, you know, like, again, alley loaded or whatever we're going to do that's going to preserve the trees on the road.
I mean, some of these potted trees can be pretty good sized themselves. They make some pretty good pots.
Yeah, yeah.
Councilmember Cox.
So, I mean, I get it, you know, there's only so much space, and you've got tree roots fighting with the house structure and with your step sewer. But there are mitigation possibilities, like if you can't put a tree in front of the house, where can you put that tree? Could we require developers to set aside more land and have more trees in green spaces? And, you know, are there offsets that we could do so that we don't lose our tree canopy totally?
Well, one of the things that Vanessa and I were talking about is, you know, maybe we look more at our planter strip widths and just say, okay, this is going to take more out of the streetscape, but we do want to keep the trees. So we're going to have to expand on planter strip width so we can still fit them in there. So I think, and that could also be dual fold, because another thing with, when you go into our drainage manual, they want to see more of the stormwater broken around the site, so doing.
With our parking lots. We have the, like.
Yeah, the
planter strips in
bioretention.
Parking lots
Yep.
that hold the water in, so it
Yep.
doesn't pool.
And that's what's really supposed to be happening along our streets right now, but because of the size of our planter strips, like Joey just did a project where we did try it, and it's there, it's Bradley Park if you want to go look at it. It's there, but it's so hard to maintain because it's so narrow, and so your sides going down are pretty steep and everything.
I don't know how feasible this is from a design perspective, but instead of cul-de-sacs in neighborhoods, could we do donuts? I'm sure there's a fancy design word for it,
There's
but
some older
instead of,
neighborhoods in and around.
kind of like what we
Lacey
do in
that-
roundabouts,
yeah.
where we have like a circle in the middle that has greenery and trees in it, instead of just having a big circle of cement.
Yeah, like Rick said, in the 70s, early 80s and stuff, we did have some of those in there. So there are examples that you can find that have those, and they're nice. It's kind of like a roundabout with good landscaping in it.
Yes, yeah.
So bigger planter boxes equals smaller lot sizes?
Well, it's more land that comes away from, if you're putting in your streetscape. So let's say right now you have 54 feet of right-of-way, which is typical for a major local residential roadway. You may have 64, if you're adding 10 feet more in them, so 5 on each side of the planter, or of the road, might make it big enough that you could do it. But that's where we have to partner with our development community and say, okay, how's this all going to work together? And it's a big undertaking, to get there, but it's something that we really need to do, because right now, we're just kind of like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And as you're seeing, we're spending so much money on maintenance that we need to, put some restrictions in, but at the same time, we need to move towards the future and actually solve the problem.
That almost sounds as if like the developer would have to remove a lot in order to make that work. And then in addition to that, do we have a minimum lot size for,
We do.
what is it?
Yeah, it depends. Different zoning has different lot sizes. I'll let Vanessa answer.
Residential,
So-
single family?
So we do, but what I do want to make council aware of is that we are currently working on, and Jennifer Adams has been here presenting to you on middle housing, which is House Bill 1110. And so right on the heels of our comprehensive plan, we'll be coming back before you with new development standards. That's going to be having a requirement by the state that we have to allow at least duplexes, but up to 6 different types of housing on these lots. And the legislation, not super clear, says around 1,000 square feet will be the minimum lot size. So currently, we have, 4,000 square feet, give or take, in our low-density residential. However, we have changes on the horizon, and these standards will be in place prior to the adoption of these next set of rules and regulations.
I think that's where potted trees come to mind, and drip irrigation and all that stuff.
So I think what you just heard from Vanessa is, it will not be 8 years before we do another guideline update.
No matter what I say.
So we should probably
Yeah,
move
let's
on a
go.
little
Let's
bit.
keep going.
We'll bring this topic back. It'll come back probably maybe some of the workshop or somewhere along the lines. We'll bring this topic back to kind of bring the land use in.
Yeah. Chapter 5, what you're seeing in there, there was a lot of redundant language in Chapter 5 that just was removed. So there wasn't anything new that really, changed much in there, or anything, to be honest. Chapter 6, we went on to ADUs. So ADUs has been kicking around for a long time, and now it's really heating up. You're seeing them everywhere. And the question that came up was, how do you meter an ADU? And what does that cost to the developer? they got the bug. So, anyway, we've currently got in place that if you have an existing house and you want to do an ADU, you're allowed to use your meter to service that ADU. If you do that, you do not pay anything additional in connection fees.
Right.
But there's some people that, and it was really set up for, these really, ADUs originally started out with like a family member living in the backyard, and then now they've gone on to, this is just another living unit on the property. So we've told people if you aren't going to work off the original meter and you want a separate meter, then you actually pay your full connection fees for that other unit. That language is now in here. It was never, in the manual before. So that was something that, again, I find kind of interesting that I thought you guys might like to know.
But it's not changing the fact that if they are gonna operate on the same meter, there's no,
Right.
if they are,
Yep.
right, and that's not changing.
That's not changing at all.
Because that was a big part of our plan with the ADU, to help with some of that middle
Right.
housing issue.
But like Vanessa just brought, I mean, the future, I think you can have a fourplex and two ADUs that are 1,000 square feet. So I don't know what that's going to look like. And we had that conversation at the beginning, like, do you want me to tackle that this time? And she's like, later, so, anyway.
Looking at a lot of vertical development if we're going to make that happen.
Yep. In chapter 7, we did something that was needed. So this goes back to, a lot of times we'll have people that come in and they'll have an on-site septic system, so a regular septic system on their lot. And currently what it says, if sewer is within 200 feet of your parcel, then you have to connect onto sewer. So the way that things are going nowadays, the costs of just doing like a connection onto a main that's in front of your house, it's astronomical. So we have one that's on Hicks Lake Road that it's a house and there's a sewer line in front of them, but to put a side sewer, like connect the sewer lateral to the main that's in the road and bring it over, they were saying it was going to be $60,000. And you're like, that's crazy. So we finally said we need to have kind of a threshold of, okay, what is a fair threshold to say, if you go over this, then we will let you repair your septic system. So again, the reason why I'm bringing this up as a big thing is that we have, we're working hard with Lot for all the conversions and all this. So we want to make sure that everybody's aware that, these will not be converted if they're too expensive. And so the number that we, ran some numbers and we looked at 15%, and that's the value of your property with the building on it. So, if you go over 15%, then we look at, we'll ask for 3 bids from different contractors, so it's not like, yep, I checked with my guy and it's, over that. And so if we get consistency of bids, then we'll allow you to go ahead and repair your septic system.
Based on the assessed value, I'm assuming, 50%?
Yep. So,
I thought, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that was the county. I thought that was Department of Health that determined when they couldn't repair
it
the
is.
septic system and had to go on to sewer.
It's kind of both. So what happens is when we get a permit for a septic system repair, they'll contact, Joey or Mike Swanson or myself, and we'll look at it and say, where's sewer? It's all based on just where sewer is. And that's our role in it, is just the 200 feet. So now we're taking a step further and saying, they're still in the driver's seat, but we'll sign off on a septic, our little thing that says
Okay.
yes or no, we'll sign off on it if they go over that 15%.
Okay.
So,
But it's still the county would have to be okay with it as well?
Well,
Yes.
yeah, Department of Health.
That's what I mean,
Or
Department of
County
Health.
Health would have to approve a septic system, make sure it can be functioned properly, sized properly, and all those type of things too. Because there is that extra step. If they can't do that, then they're back to square one.
So let's say if it's a 4-bedroom property, you need a 4-bedroom septic,
yep.
right? What is the standard cost for a 4-bedroom septic?
Probably about 15 to 20,000 is what I'd say nowadays. So, because of, like, in the past, you could do like gravity-fed systems, and now you have all the pumping and filtering and dosing and all that. So I may even be low on that number. Have you heard numbers?
I think that's probably on the low side.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can cost more sometimes to run that, to connect to the main than it would to put in a whole new septic system.
Yeah.
So is there just a quick question, because is there a difference with this standard as it relates to properties that be in the shoreline jurisdiction? I think in the shoreline master program, it actually has stronger requirements for converting the sewer.
We did not have that written in there. If we need to add that, that would be good language. I mean, we were just talking about that today, of why you can't swim in lakes, you know, and so.
When we did the last major shoreline master program, that was a
Remember
part
that.
of that, and I think we have a little different requirements in the shoreline environment that was stronger than our typical. So may as well check that for consistency, just make sure.
Or maybe just say in shoreline areas, sorry, you know, I don't know. I'm not trying to make light of anything, so.
There was something I kept seeing when I was looking through this, and I didn't understand, so I wanted to make sure that I asked. It was something about the bill of sale
Okay,
needing to be,
yeah, it's-
prior to civil drawing, approved, a signed and notarized bill of sale for all water, sewer, and street lighting installed needs to be collected. And is that what you were talking about earlier when you said, a lot of times, you know, we've put in the work and blah, 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 and the project didn't go anywhere, or is this something different?
it's different. And so that is a good, that is, we can talk about that. No, this is just like they got their civil drawings all the way, ready. They got approved, and we just waited for them to come pay their fees, and they never did that, So what we're saying on the bill of sale is that, again, we spent a lot of time trying to get paperwork out of the engineers at they'll be the very end of the project, and they want to get in or actually developers, because people will want to get into a building and we don't have your bill of sale, we don't have your right-of-way dedication, we don't have your stormwater maintenance agreement. And so we literally spend, months trying to get documents out of people. And all the other, if you look at the other, if you look at the other items that are in that area, they all say you will do it prior to civil plan approval.
Okay.
But the bill of sale was something that we weren't collecting those until probably 20 years ago. We weren't collecting for everything. And when we made that determination, that was never put into the guidelines. So we just added the bill of sale so that it was consistent with all the other documents, same time period. And then the only thing that's tricky about a bill of sale is you don't want to record it until it actually gets built. And so I think that's in there as well, that we're holding it until it gets built, and then we'll record it, So, because if you record it and it wasn't there, then you're recording nothing, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, it said it so many times, and I was like, I have got to ask that question.
yeah. All right. Then the next item in chapter 7 is, it's similar to what we went through with the, and I won't get into all the areas it goes to, but it's the setbacks that you have to have for the step tank, so that we can make sure that we can get in there and maintenance the tanks. So we added that, and the main reason why we did it is, again, when we went down to Manor House, we had to, it was like, playing Jenga. We had to really fit the tanks in there, and so now you have 2 tanks that are each a foot off the property line, and we can get to them and we can maintain them, but we have to be very careful, otherwise the shop, it's we can't get to the tanks. And so we wrote those standards in there, so there's quite a few bullet points that says they have to be here, 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 and here, so.
I will say, I went and watched the crew for a couple days do, those tanks maintenance and stuff. It was 20 a day, 25 a day on a good day, and that's with stuff not in the way.
Right.
And they're they're working, man. There's no leaning on shovels, nothing. They're going. It's pretty impressive if you guys haven't seen it. So that, you know.
Yeah. And they got into like, so Tom Fay, he's the main lead on that. And, you know, he was telling about the spoon that you have to get in there. And so that's why you have to keep it so far away from the house so that you can actually get this thing in there to clean all the areas of the step tank. So if I don't bring up some kind of gross image, then I don't feel like I've done my job properly when I see you guys. The last thing I was going to go over was that we also, so with our single-family step tanks, we never established a bedroom count. How many bedrooms can go to a step tank? And so with this one, we decided that, and with in mind that most of the time we see 3-bedroom houses, and we thought you may want to do an ADU, and usually the county considers an ADU a 2-bedroom structure, so you could do a regular house and an ADU and be on one step tank. So we came up with 5 bedrooms on that. When we went through the planning commission, one of the things that came up was you may want to come up with a volume. I mean, because I know that it has to be based on a volume whenever they're doing their septic layouts. So we may have an equivalent in there like 5 bedrooms or this much volume going to it, so that per day, then that should cover that, so that, you know, it's very clear that it's really a volume we're talking about. So, and I'm open for any questions. The only thing I was going to tell you is the next step is we're hoping to, again, incorporate all the changes that we have from the reviewers and hit a date of going back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing on April 9th. So, and then we would be, if they recommended approval, we'd be back to you hopefully. I don't know if it would be a council meeting or a work session, so it'd either be the 22nd or the 29th of April for approval. And that's kind of aggressive, so we haven't got into all the changes, so we'll see what happens and, you know, if we can make those dates, so.
How time sensitive is your process on that?
How what?
Time sensitive? Like, does it have to be done in April, or would it,
Well, here's the deal.
a problem if it was June?
My last day, so if we go on the 29th, that is my last day with the city of Lacey. So I'm trying to get this done before I retire. And so anyway, it could go forward, you know, but that's kind of what the thought process was.
Yeah.
How many years with the city?
31 and a half.
Have you done some heavy lifting in recent years?
I've seen, yeah.
So obviously, the 10-foot rule makes the tree canopy situation a little uncomfortable. I don't really know how we're going to address that, but it kind of negates the rule that we put in place 2 years ago. Other than that, I didn't really see a whole lot in here that was, you know, had a lot of conflict with it. I did have a question about the open space aesthetic in, I think it was, I don't know what chapter it is, I just took a snip, there's just too many pages. But it does say open space also serves an aesthetic function by providing areas of green space that are attractive and on amenity to the project. So the second test applied to open space will be that of the general impression the open space provides. The open space must be designed to give the impression of an attractive open space area available for park uses. And that's all lined out. And so as if it's going to be completely removed. So are we having a change to our open space
No.
test?
So what you're seeing is we're taking the language that already lives in the LMC out. And so that's some of the language that's in the LMC right now. So another thing that you may see with the next version of right now it's the development guidelines and public works standards. A lot of the development guidelines part, the book really needs to be giving just direction for the development community on what they need to do for designs. And so we took a lot, the book was originally written to let somebody that knew nothing about development get all the way through the process. And with it, there's a lot of extra language in there and a lot of redundancy. And so the redundancy, we're working directly with Community and Economic Development to take it out because it's already in the LMC. So like that's there.
So municipal code versus development guides.
Right.
Yes.
And one thing just to just kind of clarify, this document's been around since the mid-90s, and some of this language, as we've updated different parts of the code, didn't get back and cleaned up. And so this is an opportunity where Tom and his team and Community Economic Development are taking a holistic look to clean up that so we don't have those inconsistent references that conflict with each other. And putting information in the right spots within the LMC or the Public Works guidelines. And our processes have changed quite a bit since then, too. They've evolved and have some more additional state requirements since then, since this was really created. So there's a lot of cleanup that's going on to kind of make sure that's easy and people don't get off on the wrong foot.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It was an interesting read.
That was pretty thorough.
Yeah, it was good. There was one other thing that I just can't seem to find it, and I'll have to come to you. I'll have to
Sure.
bring it to you and just ask you offline. It was,
Just do it before the 28th.
it was, I think it was something about, right away and potential future annexation. We wanted to make sure that we had, I can't remember how it was phrased. So I'll have to find it
Sure.
and send you an email.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, we have reached the end of our agenda. And unless there's something more from the council? Okay, seeing none, well, thank you for your presentations. Thank you guys for being here. And with that, I will call this meeting adjourned. Keep it classy, Lacey.
Excellent.